Hey there, this is Jenna Vargas from The Jenna Show. Thanks so much for joining today. This is episode 4, and we're going to be talking about designing a career around your life. Today I have Melissa Wynn here from Six Collective Co. And a little background on Melissa. Melissa originally is from Vancouver, Canada, and is the money-making maven for small and medium-sized businesses. She's a corporate dropout, which I love, with the 11 years of business development and I just got a call. That's why I had to bounce back. 11 years of business development and revenue growth experience. And Melissa found her inspiration to start her own business shortly after relocating to Orange County, California. They say you can have it all, just not all at once. But after commuting a minimum of 2 hours each day and traveling almost every week for business, Melissa decided to build her all at once. With a fire that still burns to help businesses drive more customers and sales, Melissa founded Six Collective Co., a sales and advertising company based in OC. After generating over $33.3 million for businesses over 11 years, Melissa takes her big brand strategies and helps smaller businesses compete on a larger scale. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. So talk to me a little bit take me back before you started your business. What was your life like in the corporate world? Because I can totally relate with the commuting and the craziness and how you could be so much more productive on your own terms. So I would love to kind of hear about where your journey started.
Yeah, so I started my career pretty much in 2005. Oh gosh, well, I've always been one of those students who was a part-time worker. So I think I started my first job when I was 13 years old. And I just liked freedom and having that, ability just to, when I was 13, friends saying, I have to ask, let's see, I don't know if my allowance will allow me to. I just always had the mindset, kind of just do it on your own. If you want to do something, figure out a way. So very typical start. I started off very similar to everybody else, kind of got into the corporate world, started off in a sales coordinator position. I was working with a nonprofit. My first ever corporate job was a nonprofit actually helping small businesses. And so I was working with a lot of the small businesses and helping them with different types of partnerships and tools that they could get on a nonprofit basis. Very typical to the growth. I was climbing that ladder, going really quick, excelling, was going to part-time school, didn't know if I wanted to do my MBA. I just kind of had this crossroads and it's promotion after promotion. I was like, ooh, just kind of went down this rabbit hole. And all of a sudden I was 21 years old. And I started my career pretty early on as well. And I had already purchased my condo in Vancouver. And shortly, a couple of months after purchasing my condo, I met my now husband. And so we had gone back and forth quite a bit. And my career had brought me to a place where I was able to travel quite a bit. And at that time, it was the perfect thing for me. I was working 80-hour weeks, but I was, getting to see the world and getting to see the world partially working and then also partially for fun. And then once I started wanting to settle down and I relocated and got married and was still doing the 80-hour weeks and commuting 2 hours a day, I just thought, wow, I have everything that I thought I wanted, the title, the salary, the office, the recognition, but I just felt that it wasn't it. And I just, you look at your journey and wanting to bridge the gap between still wanting to feel fulfilled on your work and your corporate side, but how do you bring that in-house? And when you grow as a small business, you don't necessarily always feel that. But I just thought, me being here, my family still being in Vancouver, Canada, I really had no other option. I spend 80 more hours a week commuting 2 hours a day or, make that jump.
No, that's great. That's great. So when was the transition point and how did you phase out of corporate and into the entrepreneur world? And what did that look like? Did you have to plan ahead financially, benefits, or did you have some help with your husband, maybe through his job? Just kind of talk to me about that because I know everyone's situation's a little bit different, but it would be great to get some insight.
Yeah. I always say I couldn't do this without my husband, because there's more than just the financial support. There is a emotional entrepreneurial journey that you kind of go through. Yeah. It's funny because throughout my 10-year career, I've always had a bit of a side hustle. So I've always did some consulting here and there. I've always, I've always took on some projects, did some fundraisers, helped, nonprofits, or help even organization charities, just because I just enjoyed doing it. I've always wanted to kind of make a smooth transition. I always said to myself, once I get to a level of certain clients, I'm going to make that jump.
Right.
For me, it just didn't work for me. I was somebody that needed my back against the wall. I needed to kind of have this full focus. And I was really, really happy with my career up until I made a change I got headhunted to a different position. And I only was there for 2 months, not even like hardly 2 months. And I was working with a fairly difficult CEO, and I just realized, like, this is just not for me. Like, morals, ethics, everything that was true to me just didn't jive with me at that position. And I was just miserable. And miserable after 6 weeks is kind of hard to process for yourself, especially if you're somebody who wants to see things through. And I sat there and I said, look, like, I'm essentially running this agency. So let's just jump and do it. And so I'm not going to lie, the first year it was tough. It was, you don't really pay yourself that much. You look at what really is your necessities. My husband and I, we both kind of looked at our numbers and said, hey, here's our variable expenses and here's our fixed expenses. We knew going in, even though we never really planned ahead for it, because it was situational. It was kind of like, I woke up one day, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? I hate what I'm doing. I need to make a change. So we didn't have that like 6 months of savings, for example, before I jumped in. But it was almost like that, your back's against the wall. You need to make X amount of income. Let's see how we can bridge the gap for that next 3 to 6 months. And so when I say I can't do it without my husband, it's true. It was his insurance. I'm Canadian, so
I know you have good insurance.
Yeah. So moving to the US, it was a little bit of a shell shock when I kind of looked at how healthcare here was, but it wasn't as scary as I thought. Like once you kind of jump and it's kind of the first day, I remember the first day that I quit, we sat there on the floor and we had all of our laptops out and we're just kind of like, okay, what are we doing? And it's just, you just have to know where you're at that moment. Try to create some buffers around that and don't be afraid and just go and don't hesitate. Just there's 2 options, going back to work or making this succeed. Right. So
you find a way forward. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can just walk us through some areas that maybe, and it gives me chills because it takes me back from my transition as well. Are there any areas that kind of outside the box that people can cut the budget a bit if they do decide to make the leap and do something independently versus finding something with an established company? What would you say budget-wise are some top items that people might not even think of that like are not really necessity, but it's like these are like accruing a lot on a monthly basis? What are maybe do you have any like maybe some unique ones that you and your husband came across that you were like, these can be taken off the budget for a little while or like off of the bill list?
Yeah, I think I get this question asked a lot too, even from friends who want to, they see things happen after a year and they're like, okay, you're now starting to get consistency. You have establishment. They're like, how'd you do it? And so really the tricks and the tips that I give really aren't out of the box, but it's what people want to give up and what they don't. And that's the hardest part. So going out for dinners, coffees, the benefit of going into self-employment, I was commuting at least 2 hours a day. I wasn't commuting like that anymore. So my gas cost was slashed a lot. Things that you were kind of paying on the personal side. So we had a lot of subscriptions to a lot of tech platforms, just personally too, and figuring out, okay, well, what are you actually using for business and what are you actually using personally, and making that separation. My husband and I were really, really focused on being lean, because not only are we focused on building my business, in the next couple of years, I would like to say, that we're focused on building a family. And so when you're thinking about planning for these two major children, really, because your business becomes like a child to you.
Big events. Yeah.
Yeah. Your what you think is your necessities aren't really a necessity anymore. So, we make things fun. Like before I used to love to go out and eat, and now it's figuring out ways to do that at home that, and so before we used to order a lot of pizza. My husband's now the pizza master and he can make his own dough from scratch. And so
that's awesome.
It's not necessarily out of the box, but you just have to be committed to it. And
no, that's great. So then walk me into and all of us into the journey then transitioning, starting the business. Did you start out as a freelancer? Did you jump right in and become an entrepreneur? And how are you really, talk to us about your business and how you were able to start either networking, word of mouth. How are you getting your clients? And kind of walk us through that piece.
Yeah, when I first decided to kind of get into self-employment, I was a little bit nervous because I thought, okay, I just moved to California in 2014. I'm starting this journey pretty much in a year after I've moved. I don't necessarily have a network here. Mm-hmm. A lot of my business network is out in Canada, but I realized a lot of my businesses were global as well. I let everybody know. I think that was the one thing that was the hardest for me, but because a lot of people are like, oh, okay, she's going self-employed, and there's going to be some judgment, there's going to be mm-hmm. some opinion and things like that. But really there are people out there who want to help you. If you focus on building and cultivating really good relationships, no matter where in your career or life you're in, there are good people in your corner, and they tend to turn around for you when these things happen. And so when I first started out, I literally called every single one of my old bosses, and I just said, hey, I've become self-employed. And a lot of my first clients actually came from them. And so they looked at me and they said, hey, like, this is great. People tend to move places too. So I work with small businesses, but I also work with a lot of big corporations. And when people leave different buildings, it's, they kind of take you with them if they enjoyed working with you in the beginning. So when I first started, it was definitely tough. But when, I have a sales background, so I had a network of people who I knew I could kind of target with the same type of service.
Got it. So are you finding that in your world with the sales and marketing and what you do, that it's best phone calls, emails, social media? And I'm assuming since it's a little more virtual, you're not doing as much like in-person networking and events.
Right.
Okay.
I think in the beginning, I've gone to more networking events. Now that my client roster is a little bit more full, I go to their events a little bit more versus, like meetups or things like that. A lot of my communication does come off of email, Asana. I use a free program that has really, really great for task management and project management, especially when you start to kind of outsource and you start to grow your business and you are only one person, you have one voice, you have one brain, two hands, two eyes, and you can only physically do so much, in a day. And so so what I try to do is kind of give my clients or even prospects the easiest way for them to communicate with me. If they want to talk to me on the phone, I could send them a link to my calendar. They can book something in there that works for them. They can keep that link in their file. So if they needed to book something out of their scheduled time, that's easy. A lot of the time for me, when I first started in sales, it was hit the books. Dialing for dollars was what we kind of called it back then. You did a lot of cold calls. Now it's not necessarily as effective in my field anyways, mm-hmm. just because in my market, everybody is kind of being inundated with multiple different types of marketing consultants or sales funnel consultants or even tech platforms, selling, subscriptions, selling different tools. So the marketplace itself, in terms of just getting that space in that mind space, is already kind of challenging. And I always try to go with the most respectful route. And so if I know somebody is very social media driven, I love to kind of connect with them in their space. Yeah. And if somebody is like, if they're constantly not picking up their phone, let's talk to them where they feel comfortable. So I would say in the last year anyways, a lot of my phone conversations have only been with like clients who are on a schedule that we do like webinars or video conferencing or phone conferencing. But for prospecting wise has been really majority word of mouth or email, and just reaching out and saying, hey, I really like what you're doing. And this is what I've done with something kind of similar, or here are a couple of ideas that I would love to kind of disclose with you. Would you love to jump on a call?
That's helpful.
Yeah, surprisingly, then they want to jump on a call. But
yeah,
if I called them immediately, they probably wouldn't.
No, it's building that relationship, like you're saying, just like anything, just like with friends too. Like you want to start slow and then kind of build on that and be as resourceful throughout the process before you try and sell them on anything. That's
exactly.
Great. So talk to me as far as like Six Collective, what types of products and services? I feel like it's more service-based. What with sales and marketing, what is like your niche or your focus? And then we'll talk about what type of clients you typically work with.
Yeah. So our niche is pretty much digital. So digital advertising and digital sales funnel strategies. And so what that means is I very simply help my clients make money. The type of clients I typically work with are those in more technical driven. So tech platforms, mobile apps are some I've worked with in previous positions. My history comes from like working with the Ubers of the world and doing mobile marketing with them. And so I'm kind of boiling it down a little bit because I love the passion that startups have. I get it because I feel it in my veins. It runs through my body when they have that kind of same angst as me when I first started my business, and figuring out the most profitable channels and programs to help them to acquire more customers. And so, yeah, that's what I focus on. So
no, that's great. And then as far as what is it that you love and that you feel like your purpose behind your business is? What is like the big passion, like you're saying, that runs through your veins? Like what is it that you wake up every day and you're super excited? What do you think all in all with your business? What are you super passionate about?
Oh man. It's funny because I would probably say that I could get similar types of feedback from when I worked in the corporate world as what my clients say to me nowadays. It's just, what you're doing for me works and I love it. But there's a different level of pride that you get when it's your own company because they don't see somebody else's brand. They see your work ethic. And I think for me, I'm always somebody who, it sounds really cheesy, but I remember somebody telling me once, there's not a lot of traffic on the extra mile. And I feel that that's very similar to how I kind of operate. And in a corporate world, they don't necessarily see that type of dedication and that commitment. When you work for yourself, your clients tend to kind of elevate that level of commitment and appreciate that a whole lot more. And I get to choose my clients. Like I'm in a position now where I don't necessarily have to go into a niche that my boss or the company wants to go into. I get to go and work for companies that I'm passionately invested in. So a lot of the clients that I like to go after are those in like health and fitness, or even those in, e-commerce platforms for women or children and things like that. And I get to talk about topics and see the products that I actually have a personal interest with. I think that's what makes me the most excited waking up every day saying like, what do I want to do today? And what do I want to help my clients do today? And so it's not one of those, I don't ever wake up now. Before it was kind of, oh man, I'm dreading this meeting or I'm dreading this strategy because I don't think it's going to work, or, this client wants something, but I don't think it's in line with what we could deliver. Now it's kind of like, I'm passionate about the fact that, every single client on my roster list right now, like, I love using personally. And I wake up, I dream almost, sometimes I dream about strategies for them. And I wake up like, I thought about something and they're like, you are so bizarre. But that's just what I love. Like part of it is you have to feel fulfilled in the work that you do.
Right.
I don't think I would, I have friends who are like, I just want to travel and write about it. And I get that, but I think I would probably get a little bored on that too. I love solving that kind of and reverse engineering these issues and how do you uncover opportunities. And so I get to do that on multiple different scales, focusing on different types of demographics and customers. And that's super exciting for me.
Cool. And do you typically, I know everyone has their preference. Sometimes I drive myself crazy working from my home office and I'm like, I just have got to see other people. Like, do you find, I don't know if your husband comes home often, I'm trying to get some more light in here. But do you find that you like to escape outside of your home office sometimes just to get some fresh air, work from a Starbucks, Panera's, local coffee shop? What is like your preference?
So I'm like the odd one because I know we probably hear it a lot because we share similar groups that we are in, and I do understand the whole cabin fever thing, but I love my home office. Like I love my comfiness. I love being able, because I have my 3 screens that I work off of. It's hard for me to kind of do what I do in a different
Environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going to a coffee shop, because I do a lot of spreadsheet work too. The non-glamour side is a lot of reporting in spreadsheets, which is hard to do when I'm on a single screen.
Got it.
But I do get a little bit of cabin fever towards the end of the day. Like, okay, I want to go out for some fresh air or take the dog out. But I'm naturally a homebody, so I don't know if that makes me the ideal entrepreneur, because everybody also asks me, like, don't you get FOMO? Like when friends are like out late and stuff like that, like, don't you get FOMO? And I say, no, like my entertainment is kind of my business. Like yesterday I was researching when we were watching Netflix, I'm just researching graphics and, things on Creative Market, and just, I find it fun. So I don't necessarily feel like I have to escape.
Got it. No, I was just curious because I know everyone has their preference depending on personality and so that's great to hear that you're a homebody and you embrace it. I wanted to see, as far as like your scheduling, how does that work for you? Are you consistent? Do you get some time for yourself, whether it's like yoga, working out? Like, talk to me a little bit about your schedule, because I would love to know what that looks like.
Consistency is, I know it sounds lame and cliche, but it is totally key. I definitely go to the gym regularly. It's my outlet. I know it's not necessarily this energy, because I don't know if it's, because I'm already a very high energy type person anyways, and I enjoy what I do. So I don't necessarily feel that it bogs me down, but I think physically I feel it. Like if I'm sitting in front of a computer for a couple of hours, even if my mind doesn't feel it, my body will start to feel it. And so just being able to go out there, and I find it's also it's time that I spend with my husband too, because we go at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And so it's kind of like our date nights at the gym, or I do stretches, I do some yoga, especially in this area when you're working a lot on the computer, you kind of start to get punch back. And so exercising is really important. I've also hired a virtual assistant, which is amazing because she helps me stay on track, because I'm in a really interesting part of my business. I'm still very client facing, where there is still a lot to do on my own business in terms of operations and marketing and finance and all that kind of stuff. So really giving that trust to somebody else has been godsend for me, because it's tough to be consistent with your time when you have clients and projects pulling you in different directions. I do make sure in the evening, though, even though I'm kind of doing fun light work, that I check out for a couple of hours after dinner. And that's usually just because that's the time that for me and my husband to just kind of decompress and talk about our days. And you just kind of want to have that separation, because when you work for yourself and you work from home, everything could kind of feel
blended together. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Well, very good. As far as within your business, are there any like key learnings or advice that you would share with somebody else that's just starting out, or like figuring out if they're ready to make the transition and the leap?
I think similar to a lot of big life changes, you'll never ever really feel ready for it. So if you really are passionate and this is what you want to do, time is of the essence. Don't wait. Like if you have the opportunity to plan, do it, but give yourself that deadline. Give it give yourself an actual starting goal, because that's going to really push you forward. Because it was very similar to me. I had a side hustle for years. And because I had that kind of safety net behind me, it didn't really push me to kind of push forward.
Right.
Another thing to note is that you're going to have a lot of bad days, and you're probably likely going to have more bad days than you do good days, but those good days are going to make you forget about those weeks that were tough. Just be prepared for that, because I think a lot of people think success is kind of this overnight thing, and it really isn't. And I'm an impatient person to start with. So,
Me too.
so building a business over, a course of a year and not really seeing a lot of return for the first couple of months, that's building a business. So you have to be prepared and you have to weather it. And create a really good support circle, and a tight one, a small one, because there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come into you. And I have a lot of discussions with some of my other peers about entrepreneurs having anxiety or the depression with entrepreneurs, because that's a huge, thing that entrepreneurs don't really like to talk about. But it's, if you think about how we look at ourselves and our success, and if we really hold on to, say, that monetary side of things, you put yourself in a position where you could really feel not so great about yourself. And if you surround yourself with people who are committed to misunderstanding your process or not believing in your process, like, you're already going to be fighting with yourself a little bit throughout this journey. Eliminate the ones that don't want to see you succeed, don't want to see you thrive. Those are the biggest things for me, because I found that a lot of my business issues weren't really that big. It had to do with a lot of my journey and my transition. And you do lose a lot of your social circle when you become self-employed. And that's just because your commitment is, and your time and your energy really goes somewhere else.
Right. No, and how would you say that you have found that tight-knit group? Are there just over the years, or like as an entrepreneur, you've through like online communities? I want to write down something before I forget here. How did you find those virtual communities and the online communities? Because I would say it's more so online than it is in person, right?
Yeah. For my personal side, I think I've always had a very small group of friends anyways. And so and I tend to, I think after high school over 10 years ago, I realized, a big group of friends is it's hard to get things done. It's hard to plan things. And so I just liked my tight group of just my girlfriends who are also doing other things. Not all of my girlfriends are entrepreneurs. Some of them are. And we just genuinely love to see each other succeed, and we'll promote each other. We'll go out there. But then there's also a group that, I lacked with being able to kind of get that feedback, and other people who are within the same kind of phase as me, not just growing their business, but really in that same type of time frame of, not just starting a business, but moms, for example, who want to start a business and things like that. And so I definitely looked at, I started listening to a lot more podcasts. So that was a huge one. And then after listening to some podcasts, you discover some really great groups online that you can kind of join. And not every group is going to be the one for you. But I think it's kind of take what's great of each individual group. So there's a lot of different groups out there. And I think that you can find your key people. And a lot of these groups are now like 20, 30,000 people strong. Right. So trying to get out to those events and really just kind of communicating and sharing some of those stories. And I think the online group idea and whoever started the whole community side is a genius, because how much time do we have as entrepreneurs to really kind of talk about our struggles versus talk about our clients' struggles? And I think having that where a group of women or a group of entrepreneurs who get it,
it's great.
It's just nice. It's just nice to know that you're not
alone
and dealing, and you're not like, okay, I'm not the only one that cried this week.
You do have emotional times for sure.
Right.
This is one of the notes I wanted to write down was going back to your virtual assistant. Did you find him or her through recommendation, online searching? Like, how did you secure a VA? Because I know that's, I want to go into a little bit of like the outsourcing and automation of your business.
So I'll actually kind of take you, because I was not the one-hit wonder with my virtual assistants. I've hired a couple of them and they didn't work out. And I realized that it's not just about them, it's about me as well. Knowing how to hire is critical for a small business, because you could waste a lot of time and revenue when you hire the wrong person. And, for me, I was looking at recommendations, but I was also looking within those communities, because part of my business is kind of bridging the gap now where it's like, okay, Six Collective Co. has a lot of clients. It's kind of self-sufficient. We're we're getting there in terms of me kind of stepping back a little bit so I can work on my business. But on top of that, how do I build my personal brand as well? Because when I'm working with working with my clients at Six Collective, I can only do so much, versus if I'm building my personal brand, there's potentially other companies and businesses that I could help along the way, even though they may not be a retainer client or something like that. So I was looking in a lot of these groups and kind of seeing like, okay, who are these people? Who are these main players? Like, who's communicating really well? Who's starting a lot of these really thoughtful conversations and, meaningful topics? I did go and post on a lot of these groups because I know a lot of friends who will go and use Upwork or Freelancer, and I'm not dogging them at all. Like, they're great platforms, especially to start off with. You can find a lot of great talent on there. But as I'm kind of growing in this side of my business, I really wanted something more local or somebody more, based in the US. And so I used Typeform, and I created kind of this outline of questions and this roadmap of who I was looking for. And I wasn't specifically looking for skill, because skill you can teach. What I was looking for was somebody who can really work with me, because I'm, truthfully speaking, not the easiest person to work with, in the sense that I kind of go a million miles an hour. It's hard to kind of pin me down unless you're a client of mine. And it really takes a VA who wants to take control of a project, knows the objective, knows what I need to get done, and is resourceful enough to figure out how to get that out of me. And that's a tough thing to kind of hire for, because that's very personally driven. So when I put out that post out on a couple of different groups, I had a lot of applicants, and trying to sift through all of these applicants were tough. And so I started like responding to the ones that I think were really, really good. And then, typical me, life gets in the way, and I didn't respond to probably the applicants within a week. And there was only a couple of them who actually was consistent and persistent, being like, hey, what are you looking for? And I'm like, and that's when I knew, I'm like, you're somebody who definitely could work with me, because you're persistent. And so, it's trial and error. Like, know what it is you're looking for. And again, skill set can be taught, data entry, research, spreadsheets, those things are easily taught. But if somebody who is not in line with the way you work personally, your style, that's going to be a bigger challenge to kind of overcome.
So true. So true. And I love that you have found your match. Did he or she, are they in your state of California, or are they somewhere else in the US?
No, they're somewhere else in the US. So they're out in central US, Texas. And I think there's a couple of others, because she has her own little team as well. And so sometimes they go in and out. And so, and so we work pretty good on our different time zones. So, which is perfect, because usually when I get up, because they're 2 hours ahead of me, I already have what they
okay, that's awesome. They're ahead of the game.
Inbox. Yeah. So and that's exactly what I was looking for. Somebody who was just a little bit more in front of me.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. As far as I wanted to go into a little bit of automation, we went into outsourcing. What part of your business do you have automated, whether it's softwares or programs, or just talk to me a little bit about automation for your business and how, I don't know if you have any passive income and what that looks like, but would love to hear.
So I'm building out my passive income side of things, and this is what my VA is really, really good at, because she shadows me with some of my clients. And so she sees all of the things, all of the strategies and things that I put for them. And she's like, we need to get that and kind of put it out into, a course or an ebook or something like that. But because I'm so invested in my client work, it's hard for me to kind of extract that information. So we're in the process of doing all of our passive incomes and getting a little bit more heavy on our digital product side, which I'm super excited about. But my other type of system, so I'm a system junkie. I love systems. CRMs are huge. I love Salesforce. I know Salesforce is not always the best for small businesses, but kind of knowing the flow from prospect to client is so critical. There are, they say 80% of salespeople who go after prospects don't actually follow up. And it requires an average of 3 to 5 follow-ups before you actually get the deal. And so when you think about that huge gap in that, well, if you're going to be prospecting 10 new businesses every single day, by the end of the week, that's a lot of following up to do. And if you're not organized and you don't have anything in one place, you're not going to really know where to go. I tend to work with a lot of my client platforms on automation. So whether that be ConvertKit or for their email side or Infusionsoft or Salesforce even, I build out their automation funnels and what they particularly like to use.
Mm-hmm.
It makes things easier. It is heavy work up front, but it will save you so much time. And it also gives you kind of this process snapshot, like, because a lot of the times people don't know how to put a prospect through a sales funnel and how do you get it to that close. And so if you can identify these things and create and utilize the tools that work, and I know there's like Zoho and things like that that are freemium, utilize what you can, and you don't have to spend the budget of, say, like in a ConvertKit or even a Salesforce if you're not ready for that. But look at the tools that you have and just build those systems. And what objective are you looking for? If you're looking for new sales, you have to build this inbound lead funnel. How does that work? How does that come to you? How do you reapproach? And how do you be persistent and then get that sale? So there's a ton of tools that you can use.
No, that's helpful. No. Thank you for sharing. Was there any additional information regarding what you've learned on your journey, the struggles, the successes, all of that good stuff, or any words of advice? Because then there was one last thing I wanted to go over and ask you.
Yeah. Oh, word of advice. Yeah. The only thing is just nobody can do it better than you, because whatever you want to specialize in, what your expertise is, it's what you do that separates yourself from the other people is how you do it. So own that. And there are going to be customers out there who are not your ideal. Fail fast. Don't try to be everything to everybody, because it really is not sustainable that way. Niche well, focus on what drives you and what you're passionate in, because you can really get caught up when you're starting your own business, when you're just kind of thinking about the dollars and trying to get those clients in the door by just saying yes to everything, that you're going to spread yourself thin and you're going to not even enjoy what you're building. And so, just have that confidence and know that everybody starts somewhere. So
that's great. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And I can use that for myself personally. So thank you for sharing that. The one last thing I'd like to ask all my guests is, do you have an Audible or a book or another podcast that you would highly recommend? You can go through if you have them on the top of your head.
Yeah. So the podcast that I'm currently really into right now, so I look at my life as, Six Collective Co. is the way I love to make my living. It's what I spend most of my time in. It's what I'm passionate about. I get to select the clients and the projects that I really want to be in. But when you think about making a living and making wealth, I see things slightly differently. A lot of what my husband and I love to do with our, what we call fun money, and I think this is why we probably don't have a lot of friends, because everybody thinks like, how is that fun? We like to reinvest our money into different areas. And so we're going into real estate, and that's kind of like our fun kind of focus at the moment. And so I love the Bigger Pockets podcast. So I'm going to shout out the Bigger Pockets. They're just fun, and I love listening to them. Being Boss is also really great. That's a good one. I love them for the community. They've really been able to grow especially as the fact that we're so respectful in this group, because I don't see that all the time. With such a large number of members, like it's such an amazing thing. And I think those two were the biggest ones. Books for me right now. Oh man, that's something I'm going to be on a 12-hour flight on Saturday. So I'm actually looking for recommendations on books, because I don't actually get a chance anymore to really sit down and read for myself. I would love to. So that's why podcasts have been really the star for me right now. Yeah. It's like,
I was going to say, I've been a crazy reader over the last year or two. But I know one of our other guests had mentioned The Year of Yes was a good one. Have you read that one?
I haven't yet, but I've heard of it. Yes.
There's that one. And then The Art or The War of Art. That was one of the other highly recommended ones. But just throwing those out there. And I'm sure
good to know.
Others that he'll always message you. But thank you so much for being on the show. This has been great. Is there any last words that you wanted to share with our listeners, viewers?
No, just thank you so much for having me, and go get them. Just get them.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Melissa, for being on. You can check out Melissa more on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And her website is sixcollectiveco, which is co.com. And we will see you back here next week on Thursday at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.